Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and we're back on reel repair. We're also doing that series that we talked about on the business of used fishing reels, but today I'm back doing a reel repair. And actually I'm opening up one that I just received from a distributor. Going to take a look at it. It's a Bass Pro Offshore Angler Gold Cup. And I'm not doing this one necessarily because it's a popular reel. I've never had one of these open, but I sometimes like to explore, find out what's inside these reels, as well as tune it up and put it back into the marketplace. So this is a larger 70 size reel. It has 5 ball bearings in it. It handles about 375 yards of 14-pound test and about 260 yards of 20-pound test. So it's a big reel, suitable on the in the oceans for the larger fish, surf casting and the like, the Great Lakes for sure, and catfish if you're into the big catfish in the rivers and the inlands. So I'm going to take this apart. The distributor tells me it's made by Daiwa. It's an offshore angler, so it's the store brand for Bass Pro. I've never had one apart, so we're going to take it apart and I'll show you how to lubricate this if you happen to have one of these. And we'll all learn a little bit about this reel and whether it's something we want to recommend going forward. Seems like a pretty sturdy reel at the moment. So I'm going to do the case removal here to get to the gears. And I'm going to do the drag surface up top. You can see that there's a lot of dust. This thing's been sitting in the distributor's bin for a while. It came back as what's called an R&R reel, a repair and return. A lot of times it just comes back because it's the end of stock and they've moved on to do something else and it's just an extra reel. It was probably on a rod and reel combination. There's a lot of different variations as to why that happens, but we'll go see, take a look. Alright, so to get to the gearing on this one, we remove the handle. We do that in a backwards motion. You saw me do that. I also took off the spool because I do want to do a service underneath here and check out what's going on there as well. And in order to access that, we're going to have to remove some of this stuff. But let's go to the gearing first. We have 4 Phillips head screws, so we're going to go take those out. And again, it seems like a pretty sturdy reel. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about that. He also said it was made by Daiwa, so I'm not sure. I tried to locate the country of manufacture on this one, but as many of you are aware, they put those annoying little tags on these things, and those tags just tend to disintegrate over time and get lost, and you lose any documentation that you have there. And I guess I could probably go to the website, but I'm guessing this reel is a year or 2 or 3 old now, and that it's no longer the current brand, which is probably why it came back. These screws were really put in there tightly, so I was trying to find the right, there you go, the right screwdriver to get the turn and the leverage on this. So some folks ask me about using a mechanical screwdriver to take the cases out. And you can do that, and certainly you can do it on the outbound portion, what I'm doing here in terms of taking the screws out. I don't recommend doing that on the return trip when you're reassembling the reel, because these cases, depending on what they are, and this one looks like it's a graphite case, they get fragile. And if they get fragile, you over torque these screws, and you're either going to warp the side plate and cause performance issues with the reel, or if it happens to be a plastic case, you can outright crack it, and then you have no reel at all to use. So it doesn't hurt to take a couple extra minutes on these and go ahead and do that. So while I'm doing these, and I'm having to fight this one particular one here, but I'm sure we'll get through it. Why don't we talk about a couple of things? So you'll notice I have a glove on my hand. I like to do that when I'm opening up reels, because I don't know what's inside these reels from a lubrication, chemical, contaminant kind of a thing. So it's always kind of good to go ahead and protect your hand there if you can. I find I can't wear a glove on my my working hand. It's just I just lose the grip and the sensitivity that you need on some of these to move that forward. Okay, now that we get the side case out, this is probably why it got returned. This is dry as a bone. So if you're looking for performance issues, this reel definitely needs to be serviced. There's no tail of any kind of grease or lubrication there at all. The ball bearing does spin. This is nice. I got 5 ball bearings. We're going to find out where they are. Typically, the minimum you want on a ball bearing is you want a ball bearing on the drive side, a ball bearing on the handling side of the main gear. You'd like to see a ball bearing up top here. And actually, if you find a reel that only has the 1 ball bearing, it's usually on the pinion shaft here. Then we'll see where the other ones are. So this one is dead dry, so we know we're going to have to do the lubrication on this one. And before I go much further, I'm just going to go up top here. So to get up top and gain access to the internal workings of this one, we're going to want to take the click mechanism off here for the drag. So when your drag is working, there's a little key that works against this ridged gear. That's held in by a pressure washer, which I'm removing now, and that's what the spool sits on. So this little pressure washer comes off, then this pulls off, and this is nice. This is one of the ball bearings. I haven't seen this configuration before, but there's a nut that holds the rotor on that has the ball bearing on the top side of it. I'm going to guess that there's a ball bearing on the bottom side of it as well, and that there's an anti-reverse ball bearing, and that would make the five bearings in this reel. So there's a tie down here. It's a little circular clip held on by a little set screw. And if you'll notice, I'm putting all the pieces and parts into a bucket here. So far I like the quality of this reel. I don't know what it sold for originally. I got these in liquidation, did not pay much. But again, if they're bringing back reels that are out of production, then what typically happens is they get wholesaled out pretty cheap, particularly if they don't know the service history of them and they've been opened. And this one's obviously been opened. And again, we can tell that there's no lubrication on this whatsoever. And when you find yourself in that situation, you want to make sure that it gets repaired and lubed before you do anything further. Okay, this does not have instant anti-reverse. It has a series here of centrifugals that when the reel is backed, it moves the anti-reverse dogs accordingly. That means that there's a bunch of ridges on the back end of this, which there is, and these stop in the ridges to hold the piece from going or free spooling when that's in play. So this is how it works when it's in gear, and then that's the override, and then when it's out of gear, we do that. So whenever I go back to reinstall the rotor after checking, I always bring the anti-reverse dogs off so that it goes easier in terms of slipping that on. The only thing I'm going to lube here is the bearing that's down below there. I'm going to use a reel oil. I use Reel X, and I'm not going to take this whole assembly off. This is simply lubricating the reel at this point. So we'll just put a couple of drops of oil inside where the shaft rides, outside where the pinion gear is, and then on the main bearing itself. I also drop just a little bit of oil on each one of those anti-reverse dogs. And again, I'm going to guess that this has been sitting in a warehouse for a while now, and that's why all the grease on this is dried off. Okay, so with that, we can remove the main gear. The main gear has a small drive gear in the back, which operates the crosswind gear back here, and it might be hard to see. The crosswind gear spins, and as you can tell, moves this up and down for the spool activation. I do notice that well, let's take that nut out. So there's a nut that holds the spool shaft in. I'm just going to put that on the side. I'm not going to put that in the bucket because we're going to move quickly on this. And this has a little bit of general purpose grime on it, so I'll take that off. On the back end of this, I've got the the second bearing, it looks like it's a little varnished, so I'm going to clean that up as well. Bearings I oil, so I'm going to put a couple of squirts of oil on that. And then this crosswind gear back here, which moves up and down and moves that shaft back and forth, I'm going to put blue grease on. So I use a Penn reel grease. There's plenty of them out there in the marketplace. Penn works for me, and it's available in various forums, so why not go with what's easy to get. And then I'm also going to put that blue grease onto the main pinion gear. And I didn't have to clean this reel up because there's really no cleaning going on here. It's all drier than dry, so we're in good shape there. Okay, so with that, it's easy enough to do. You just lubricate the teeth on the crosswind gear, a little bit on that where this shaft block is going to work. Lubricate the bearing in the back here, lubricate the pinion gear shaft, oil the main bearing. Another way to oil that bearing also, and I'll just do it for show, you can come in underneath here if you have this open. You don't have to take the rotor off because that bearing is sitting there. So if you wanted to do just a drop of oil there and then rotate it so that it works itself into the bearing, then that's acceptable as well. On the main gear, we're going to check to make sure all the teeth are here. Remember, this got returned and we're not sure why. We're assuming it was just under production. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of blue grease on that. Don't need much because I have it on the pinion gear already, but we'll go just a couple of intermediate steps there along the way. I'm also going to put a little bit of grease on that back one. I'm going to check the teeth on that as well, the one that drives that crosswind gear. And then I'm going to put just a little bit on the shaft that goes back in and gets set there. So let's go ahead and put that back in. What I'm going to do, I just have minimal access there to get that shaft nut back in, so I'm going to go put the shaft in on top of this. Most of the time you can work around the main gear, and in some cases you actually have to pull the main gear off in order to get the that spool shaft out. In this case we didn't, and since there's minimum clearance there, I'm going to go ahead and put this back in before I put the main gear back in. Okay, so I'm tightening that down now. That was a little loose when I opened it up, which is kind of interesting. I'm going to put the main gear back in. And I think right now what we've decided is we got a quality reel here. So we got the bearings, that the one on the other side 2, the one up here 3, the one in the cap here 4. I suspect that we have another one probably behind this crosswind shaft here on that crosswind bearing. I haven't seen it, but that's probably where that one is. And what I like about this is these are threaded screws. They're not the coarse screw, which would be a plastic screw. So this is a metal casing. It's not a plastic casing that we were talking about before. And that's another sign of nice quality in a reel. So having done that, I can put those 4 screws back in now. Now some people say, why don't you put Loctite on these screws? And you know, it'll help the screws get set, and they won't vibrate out when you go to a boat, you know, on the boat, or the vibrations generally can shake some screws free. And I think you know the answer to that. If you put the Loctite on, you're not getting the screw out, so you won't be able to service the reel again. And sometimes, quite honestly, that's exactly what's happened on some of the reels I get back. Customers put the Loctite in, can't get the screw out, breaks the screw off. They ask me if it can be repaired, and quite honestly, it can't be repaired at that point. So, word of caution there: do not use Loctite in the reinstall of the reels. And some folks have said, yeah, there's that light, there's the blue Loctite, not the red, and you can break the seal on it. And some also point out that Penn on some of the internal parts uses the Loctite. So I just would caution you, I don't use it. So okay, and then so I have these in. Remember, there's 2 ways, right? It's in and out. I bring them in so that I can reinstall the rotor. The rotor lines up. This is an interesting cap with the bearing in it. So I'm going to go ahead and put the cap on first. Then I'll make sure that we lubricate the the bearing before we let go of that. That's a big nut. Then we have that set. And you just got to play with it. This has minimal swing for that. And that's why I use the parts bucket. I know where to look for the pieces as I go to reassemble. Keeps them all in one place. It also helps. You saw me lay a couple of screws on the table, and I've learned from experience that as you, if you leave them there and you're not aware that you leave them there and you reach for a wrench or something, you knock them around, and you get lost. All right, so now I'm going to put the lube on that shaft bearing, and then I'm going to go work on, let's put these two back. We'll put that drag click back on, and then we'll put the pressure washer on. And this is a common setup in a lot of spinning reels where you'll have these pressure washers. We're just going to go up top here, check out these drags, make sure that they're in good stead. Like I said, it looks like this reel's been sitting for a while. These drags may need lube unless it's one of the types of drags that do not require lubrication. So on the lubrication, there's 3 types of drags, and these are Teflon drags, and Teflon drags do not require lubrication. So the way the drags stack, it goes a seat of the spool, drag washer. In this case, they're giving me 2 eared washers, so the next one up would be an eared washer. Teflon washer, round washer. Oops. Teflon washer, eared washer, cap washer, and then you saw this spring which rides in a little cut in the spool. Keep that close. You don't want that thing shooting out. If it shoots out, you're in trouble. You got to go find it. So you want to get it seated in one side, and work the prongs around until they're seated completely, which they are in this case. And here this spool has got a lot of dust and grime on it, and I like to use a product called Purple Power. It's a general degreaser, and it's a little bit of a squirt on that. And we're going to see that that's just going to shine this thing right up. Take all that accumulated, probably a year plus of sitting in a warehouse off this spool. So I would say overall, if you're considering buying a Bass Pro Gold Gup 70 series reel, whatever its current edition is, I would say that it's a quality product. Again, I don't know the price range on this one. My guess would be it's a moderately priced reel, probably in the $40, $50, $60 range. Chances are it probably came as part of a rod and reel combination. I didn't see parts in there that looked like they were Daiwa parts, but that doesn't mean that this reel wasn't made by Daiwa. Again, that was a speculation from the distributor. He thought that they were made by Daiwa. That did not look like a Daiwa kind of an assembly that I had there. And I've never seen that ball bearing in the cap like that, so I'm not sure who makes this reel. But this is a smooth reel, and this is going to provide somebody with a lot of fun in fishing. And I'm going to be able to sell it at a reasonable price because I got it as a distributor closeout. So I hope you learned something with me. If nothing else, what you've learned is go explore. Don't be afraid to purchase a reel that you're not familiar with. If it has the a store brand on it, like this one, Offshore Angler is a store brand for Bass Pro. If nothing else, you can open it up and say I don't like it, and either sell it to somebody else or give it away, or just put it on a wall, hang it up there, and call it the price of tuition to learn about a reel. So at any rate, I hope you've enjoyed this. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more of these kinds of things, then subscribe to my channel. And if you have any comments or questions, I respond to all of them. So with that, I thank you for watching the video. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.